And welcome back, everybody, to Celestial Assault, presented by the Gundam Evolution New Type League. And once again, we are part of the Pilot Academy, which is so sick. Of course, these players are going to be playing for those points to potentially qualify at the end of the season. But I am EGP Wonder Chef, joined by James Jamerson Lee once again. We're one match down, and we've got quite a few more to go.
Yeah, and I mean, what a way to start off the day. Typically, we don't see a 2-1 scoreline. It's always been 2-0 throughout the upper bracket for the most part when it came to these events. But our first match of the day, going to map number 3, that was a nice treat to have.
Yeah, and some really close matches as well. You know, we've started off with, you know, maybe some newer teams before that have gone up against a little bit more experienced teams. But I feel like as we're getting further and further into this game's competitive life, we're starting to see a lot of players that have really gained that experience, that competitive experience. I would say almost the majority of these players in the tournament, although maybe not on the same teams that they're on, have competed in a lot of these breakout series events. So you love to see it. You love to see them all grow as players. But we are going to be moving on now to our next match, which does contain, again, some familiar teams. I feel like I've said this every single event now, but some familiar teams with some not as familiar players for the team. So our first team is going to be BOZOS, which we actually got a chance to see in that previous video during the break. Of course, we're our champions for the Halloween Havoc event a few months ago, but it is a very different BOZOS, as I believe there might only be 1 or 2 players who are actually remaining from that team.
Players that I remember from that composition, I believe, as well. On the other side, it's going to be IQ that are coming in. Victus, Fusion Blackie, Chaotic Bacon. I mean, Fusion Blackie, I believe, was one of the turn A players that were turning heads throughout our last event.
Yeah, almost the turn A player. I believe that was the player who actually managed to pull off that super sick like double kill to defend the bomb that we were talking about earlier on Quarry before. So we are going to get a chance to see them again. And, you know, IQ is one of our 2 teams. I believe it was IQ and Portland Burnsiders that actually have the majority of their teams being carried over from previous events. So we for sure know that this is a strong team. I believe they got 4th place in our previous event. And, you know, with that showing that we saw, of course, from that particular play, but just their entire team together was extremely solid, and they're going to continue on. So this is going to be a familiar team with not many of the same players, and a familiar team with mostly the same players. So you'll have to see the consistency. I'm sure there's some good synergy just amongst them as, you know, human beings. I'm sure there's a lot of friendliness within that. They're probably friends in real life or from other games or something like that. But with all the roster changes, you expect to see a little bit more. I like to see the consistency.
Yeah, and speaking of consistency, I mean, if our first match of the day was any kind of indicator, being able to see more turn A, especially like we said, off of Fusion Blackie, is going to be fantastic. But let's get into our map picks and bans. Like we mentioned, we do have a swap in our map pool. Colony Trading Post, our newest map, is going to get banned again.
Stop
and
it.
I mean, I can understand, right? Like maybe teams just don't have as much experience. They kind of just want to get that out of the map pool. So I understand going for that ban. Harbor City is our second ban of this set.
They heard that those are my 2 favorite maps visually, and they were like, no, you can't have either of those. But we are, of course, down with our more consistent maps. Thermal Plant. Okay. So I was gonna say we've got 3 of our most popular maps here remaining. Thermal Plant is not one of those. It's one of the rarest that we've actually seen, I believe, on just any of these breakout series events. So that is a really interesting first pick. Of course, that's going to be a very chaotic close-up domination mission. So maybe we're going to see some different team comps for that one.
And that still leaves Mountain R&D, so we might get double domination. We'll find out in just a moment. Of course, teams do like to fall back on Flag Fort, but now it is going to be Mountain R&D. So 2 maps in a row of domination. I mean, I feel like Thermal Plant itself might actually just set the pace, and whichever team ends up winning that first map might end up walking away with map number 2 as well.
Yeah, this is going to be a chaotic set. Regardless. Okay, we're gonna see Flak Fort banned. I would say overall Flak Fort is the most like like the slowest paced map of all of these remaining. I get a feeling that these, yeah, I was actually going to say, I get a feeling that we're going to see Quarry probably, because there can be those close inside brawls for, I guess it's probably got the most close inside brawls of any of the either destruction or point capture missions. So this is going to be a lot of close up fighting, almost guaranteed. If you choose to go to B, especially on Quarry, you're basically playing the same range as like a domination mission until you have to get at least to that second set of bomb sites. But I don't even know if we're going to get there, because like you said, if one team is better at these close-up domination style brawls, then they might just sweep the entire set in 2 games.
Yeah, and we got to see a lot of Barbados, and if we're going to talk about brawlers, we have to talk about Barbados coming in off of our first set. Gasman picking that one up, really showing off what you can do with that. But when it's compounded with a second brawler, the Exia being utilized here, it is extremely potent, and on both of those maps, on both Thermal Plant and Mountain R&D, that combo is just so deadly.
Yeah, and that was actually one of my big questions over this event, is how many Exias are we actually going to see? Of course, we know that Exia is still strong if used correctly, but Exia was, I would say, one of the suits that was hit the hardest over the previous 2 patches since our previous event. So it could be one of those things where it's like, okay, yeah, it's still good, but maybe we just shift to a different strategy. And of course, we have already seen it. In fact, I want to say, like, be the solo reason why we saw a win on one of the points when it did manage to use that mobility to get over the mountain on the second set of Quarry, the second set of bombs on Quarry, and then get that like sneak plant with the juke. So already, you know, it's worked really well. It's done a lot of damage. Like you were just mentioning, the double brawler has been working out really well. But I still, amongst the other teams, I'm curious how much Exia we're going to see. Are we still going to see a near 100% Exia rate? Because without a doubt, it was like the most picked suit. That was one of the only ones that was almost never subbed out on any of the winning teams before. But especially now on domination, I'd have to expect that we're going to probably see a good chance of Exias.
Yeah, I mean, Exia, even though it did suffer some pretty large nerfs, right? The damage for its dagger has been reduced, along with its headshot multiplier. I believe it's down to 1.7 instead of 2.0, like all the other headshot multipliers are. And that does, of course, also mean that the Trans Am comes up less often. And so it was actually a pretty big nerf to it, but just the simple fact that it has so much mobility, it still has a lot of deadliness in its kit. We're still seeing it being utilized right now. Just the simple fact that it basically has 6 dashes, it's kind of unheard of, and they haven't touched that aspect of its kit. So it's still going to be extremely potent. And when it comes down to these 2 maps in particular, Mountain R&D and Thermal Plant, it's able to utilize that mobility, especially its verticality, extremely well.
Oh yeah, being able to get those flanks, and also just the fact that it is melee, which means that it is going to automatically counter any sort of shield options, which, you know, we might see, we might not see, but it's not like you have to sacrifice anything for it. So I think there is, of course, a good chance we're going to see that. The big question also, now that we've seen the first set of the day, is are we going to see a bunch of Barbados over time? I think personally that Thermal Plant is one of the best Barbados maps in the game, especially when you get to that point C. It can be just so good at sneaking through all the different little side angles, that using that mobility of the jump to be able to threaten both sides, or sorry, I should say both levels of that point at the same time. And all of the little, I guess, hallways are exactly the size of its hitboxes. So I'm a personal fan of it on Thermal Plant. I've always been a fan of it on Thermal Plant, which is not always the most common thing to see, right? It's one of the least picked maps, I think, in the entire Breakout series so far. But if we're going here first, I would personally like to see it at least.
Yeah, again, it's just when you talk about that verticality, it's so important on Thermal Plant, like you said, Site A and Site C, even for Mountain R&D as well. You can utilize that center drop point to get over to a health pack if the ones on the outsides are taken. There are a lot of different ways that you can approach it with both Exia and Barbados. So I definitely see maybe both teams picking this one up. Of course, it does come down to who the teams were able to pick up. We talked about it. Huge roster changes, and trying to find yourself a Barbados specialist or an Exia specialist can be incredibly hard.
Yeah, so as far as BOZOS goes, the only player that we know for sure has at least been like a committed player to a suit is Be Their Shield, which was, of course, amply, you know, named Shield with as using the Sazabi, so, you know, an actual tank player. So that is going to be, I mean, it's going to be a good suit on here, but you're going to know that there's going to be a shield, right? So you got to think about that when going into the matchup. And maybe it'll affect your decisions. Maybe it won't. Maybe you just go with what you have. But wait, is this thermal
This
plant?
is we're starting on Quarry? I think something might have gone wrong with this, or maybe I don't know. Never mind. Let's just go
Yeah.
with it. Teams are playing it like they are actually going for this one. So the Ashmar Nitro Genocide trying to find that first little peak. We'll see though if there is a Barbados up here. No, it's the Gundam Unicorn coming out for the defensive side. They do have Chaotic actually on that Barbados, the first one to fall.
Yeah, tried to hold that angle up there, but they were so ready. That is a huge coordinated push, and it looks like they're all going to also coordinate to push back around aside that little defensive box, and they're going to be doing a lot of damage. However, they're kind of putting themselves into a choke point here, and it looks like they're taking a lot of damage. Fusion Black is going to go down, but aside from that, I mean, just so many suits on the offensive side are going to be the ones that are falling, and this looks like it's going to have to be a reset.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to get much with a Suzabi and the Pale Rider. The Pale Rider has fallen here. You can see now for the defense, they're going to go ahead and set up once more. Merle is on the back line on that left side, deathballing it up with his squad. We'll see in just a moment if they want to try and approach for a two-pronged attack, or if they just want to try and all barrel down on the left side. They are regrouping once again, but you can see Chaotic is up there with that Barbados once more. Doesn't look like he's going to give up that high ground quite yet.
Yeah, I mean, it is a nice spot to hold. It was just you got super focused, but okay, here we go. Let's see if being up there is going to give any sort of advantage here. No, we're not actually going to see okay, the Barbados does take down Be Their Shield. Like I said, that is going to be one of the biggest counters to, of course, any sort of shield unit. And it's actually Chaotic is just running havoc in this little spot. And that is going to be, once again, an offensive reset. They're going to have to regroup, reheal. However, a lot of players actually down on the defensive side, so they might just go for a quick push here.
Yeah, Chaotic is set up on that high ground once again, but that peel, when you're that defense, you try to back away, buy some time for your Barbados come on in, and it looks like they're taking their time on the offense to try and go in. Fusion Blackie gets sent back because of that Gundam Unicorn. Chaotic finds one. That's a 1-for-1 exchange, but Nitro Genocide is caught out 2v1, and he will fall.
Ooh, yeah, we might see the pickup. Wow, the pickup does actually happen. It looks like Exit wasn't there quite in time. We're going to see Exit on sorry, just going down immediately. Exponent, I mispronounced that. But just barely staying up at 1 HP behind that shield for so long. Very impressive. But again, offense just getting picked off. They're getting so close to that relay, but they're just never quite able to take it. We do see the punch available on Nitro Genocide on this Ashamar, and that can be one of the best G maneuvers to use when they're all hiding behind that box, because you can get like a 4 hit with that.
Yeah, Merle has the Screaming Nimbus, though, and that could just be enough to shut this one down as for the BOZOS side, really, they might have to go this one dry. We'll see if Nitro Genocide wants to open things up with that punch. If they end up grouping up on the left side, that would be huge value for him. You can see, though, Chaotic finds a pick onto Wiki on that high ground, and he does back away. Does he get behind the corner? No. Wiki ends up getting res now. There's a huge advantage here for the offense. I mean, they might not even have an opportunity to try and utilize these G maneuvers. Never mind. The Screaming Nimbus comes on in, and Victus will go ahead and pop that Hades as well just to try and deal with this. You have to remember, he is so tanky, but D will ultimately go down. The defense holds for now and sends them packing once more.
Yes, Screaming Nimbus is the great equalizer. There is not much that really just completely shuts it down. You know, it makes it so that you always have a chance to push. You always have a chance to hold off a push. And that was a great usage of it on the defense. They still have 4G maneuvers up. Nitro Genocide still holding on to that punch. Maybe has to use it pretty soon, though. We're down to less than a minute left.
Yeah, Fusion Blackie has his G maneuver, Mr. Big Large as well with that punch, and the funnel. So a lot to utilize here. And really, again, it's all about timing. It's all about trying to layer these well. The Blue Jay going into the back line finds one before he falls. That's Chaotic on the Barbados finding that kill as they pop all of their G maneuvers, basically, except for Exponent, who ends up going down before he can use it. But now with 30 seconds left to go, they just need to get Exponent back here for that final defense.
Yeah, and I mean, we did see a fight where all the G moves were used on the last defensive hold, and then it actually came back to bite them in the previous set, but we've got at least one left. As long as Exponent can actually get back in time for this, there's only 13 seconds left. It does seem like there's a good chance that he will be back, and we are going to see this final push. Be Their Shield pushing again back behind the box, but there we go. The double punch, actually from Nitro Genocide, finally paying off. However, so many on offense went down. It didn't matter, and that's the thing, again, there, you know, their push was good, but you also have to remember you're pushing for the relay. You're not actually pushing for the point right there. So they had to get so far in not much time that they maybe even just didn't have a chance to wait for that entire regroup. But a great hold on the first point here.
Yeah, they never made it past the waypoint. We typically don't get to see these kind of full holds, and this was a complete full hold. No progress made, no mega charge going down whatsoever for BOZOS. So IQ now sitting in a perfect position now to take that early lead in this best of 3.
Yeah, this is, I mean, again, you know, I was so curious as to what was going to happen when BOZOS decided to, you know, play with a very, very different team, very different lineup this time, as opposed to IQ, who was just so solid. And you know, we're starting to see some things, but you know, we'll see as this map goes, as this set goes on. We do have, of course, the 2 domination missions. After this, it looks like we're going to actually, they switched the first and the third. It looks like maybe we were looking at it in the wrong order. So there is going to be Thermal Plant as the decider if we do get a game 3, which means that we're definitely at least going to go still to the Mountain R&D. However, they still, of course, now have to deal with this particular push. And look at this. This was, yeah, they just need to do basically anything here on offense as BOZOS.
Yeah, this is going to be so difficult for BOZOS, especially they're trying to play the Pale Rider right now into basically the double dive. But it looks like, no, they're not actually picking up Nexia on the side of IQ. So it's all going to come down to Chaotic to go in for that first opening and try and disrupt the defense. Again, teams typically holding here on the left-hand side. Maybe you have 2 players there on the right as well, but here comes a charge on in. Exponent is able to use that axe to get over that wall just to get a nice little scan on the rest of the squad, and no presence on that high ground is going to make it free for Merle to be up there with that Dom Trooper getting 3 damage off onto this entire death ball. You have Blue Jay going in with that dive, but again, Sazabi versus Sazabi this time around. Exponent will be the first one to fall, and this looks like a good hold now coming off from BOZOS, only losing out on their Dom.
Yeah, this is a great first situation. In fact, yeah, we get to see the full team kill. This should be plenty of time for Die to run back on that Dom. They've got a great positioning here. They didn't really lose too much life even within that hold. It just looked like whatever happened there, despite the fact that they did manage to get that high ground with the Dom on the offensive side. I'm surprised they didn't manage to get more damage out of that situation. But this is the first time in a while that we're actually seeing just kind of double Sazabi teams against each other. So this really could come down to who can, you know, kind of break that front line better, and it definitely was a defensive team in that situation.
Right now, Merle actually getting some decent damage off so far, but Blue Jay ends up finding out Mr. Big Large as they charge forward. That's 2 knocks coming out, but Blue Jay is finding so much value with this Exia now. They still have to deal with this waypoint as they try and charge forward. Die finds 1 more onto Exponent. Now BOZOS sending them back once more. Merle is the last player remaining. Never mind, Chaotic finds 1 here, but they need to go for the reset regardless.
Yeah, this is just, I mean, nothing's holding at this point in time on offense. Although, hold on a minute. There we go. That is going to be a pretty big. I don't really understand why we saw that Dom just kind of like fade by. Actually, for a second, I thought it was on the other team. I was a little bit confused, but here we go. We're going to see the big push again, but we are going to see a kind of alone Mr. Big Large right there. Eventually, they're going to be going down to a mono. Once again, might have to go to a reset. There's a few people still alive, but a lot of players on defense are finally starting to fall, so there might be a chance to kind of sneak take this relay and start the offensive pressure.
Ooh, Merle finds 1 onto a mono, and so now with that opening, there's actually a chance for them to charge forward. He's already on a site, trying to get the plant, but Die is there. So Dom versus Dom, but Merle has to be careful as he is outnumbered right now. That does actually pull apart the defense, though, and they might have an opportunity to actually just swerve on by to go over to the B site. Jay in the back line will go down. That's the Trans Am being utilized as well. Die does have that Screaming Nimbus to utilize as Amano goes for that Hades for now. He needs to start finding value, but they are kiting back up against it. Die with the Screaming Nimbus finds 1 more. This is the mega charge has gone down, and now there's only a few seconds remaining. Someone needs to try and defuse it. They do have someone on it at the time being. Will someone be able to come in for the disrupt? And they do, and so that will be IQ taking this.
Wow, yeah, that was actually really close to that and not actually happening. So really great stuff there. This was a really interesting match of Quarry. I feel like we very rarely see an entire Quarry match that's almost the majority of it is played just on that first point, on that first relay, unless it's really dominant. But this wasn't particularly dominant. There was a lot of back and forth team fighting. It's just that neither team was really able to get those first full pushes into the relay really, really quickly, as we tend to see a lot of other teams doing. So this might be a set of teams that are just maybe both a little bit more defensively minded. I mean, they do, of course, both have the Sazabis. They're both got a little bit more tanks stuff going on. We didn't see like the double melee comps like we were seeing before. So this might just be a little bit more of a slower pace set, which is interesting because now we're going to go to 2 or 1 domination missions.
Yeah, I mean, it felt like definitely for the defensive sides there, when it came down to the difference between Exia and Barbados. Both of them were definitely trying to play for that counter dive, with the Barbados being a little bit more aggressive, controlling that high ground overall. On the opposite end, when we saw that second defense, there was no presence whatsoever. Merle was able to get there on that Dom, getting free damage off and being a nuisance and honestly a huge damage threat, especially when you're playing such a huge kind of like deathball-y style that are on the left-hand side, leaving things open. And I feel like that was the biggest difference maker. Having that Barbados up on that high ground really did kind of change the dynamic for the defense there on the waypoint.
Yeah, it really is looking like like Barbados is the turn A of this event, as opposed to turn A from the previous Gundam's Grace event, where it's just kind of a lot of the deciding factor of a lot of these matches, which is really cool to see. Of course, a lot of people love Barbados. I know there's a lot of Iron-Blooded Orphan fans out there. I've run into a bunch of really funny names on Gundam Evolution. Shout outs to everybody who runs a funny name, but we might now see some different comps, I think, because now is the point where we're going to go from the little bit less of the controlled map over to one of the more chaotic types of maps, and then we're going to go even more chaotic. I would say Thermal Plant is maybe a little bit more chaotic than Mountain R&D. As Mountain R&D, we've seen a lot of like you hold the high ground, you play solid mid-range, and then you can kind of just go from point to point to point. But even still, it's going to be a pretty big switch, and both of these teams have shown that they do have some pretty strong like melee, like flanker type proficiency. So I'm curious if we're going to see any more, or if they're just going to stick with their core teams, which both honestly would be pretty good teams for a domination match.
Yeah, honestly, I'm surprised at, of course, seeing both Sazabis being utilized here on either end. And if it does come down to the tank play, I mean, that is going to be super important, especially here where you do need some of the tankier bodies, where you do, if you're going to play around a unicorn from either side, having that Sazabi, having that extra tankiness will be huge with that armor. So I don't see anything actually really changing there. I mean, it seems like Deathball might be coming back more into fashion. We didn't get to see Unicorn in the first map, but it is really prevalent here.
Yes. I mean, we sometimes we see it on Quarry. Of course, we didn't this time around, but we did see it. Oh wait, no, did we see it on?
Not in the first set. Not in the first set.
Right. Yeah. So sometimes we do tend to see some unicorns on any of these, of course, these tighter levels where you get a lot closer to each other as a team. And Mountain R&D, I think that's that a lot of the time. The only issue is that, of course, sometimes you can kind of be split up between the high grounds and the low grounds on point A or C. But especially when you're on B, or if you're all pushing the same area and you have that level of coordination, yeah, I think Unicorn's super great here. Methods, of course, is great too. I mean, that's one of my favorite things about this game too, as far as the meta goes, is that we do get a chance to see both of the quote unquote healers of the game. I did not knock my mic over when I was doing that. We see them both a lot, right? Both Methus and Unicorn have so many really good uses in different situations that you never feel like you're like, okay, well, we just got to pick this one. Like they're both just really unique in not only the way that they support their team, but in the way that they provide an offense as well. And in this particular map, if we are going to Mountain R&D, you can think of it more as like, okay, Unicorn can sit here and we can, death ball and we can hold this high ground, or Methus can use its mobility to be able to challenge the high ground from like a lower ground, or be able to escape from situations when you're fighting for B a little bit better, or just get like a higher shot with its, its F with its charged blast. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it's big AoE blast on like a big group of enemies that are all death balling. So it's really just all how you want to play as a team. And the flexibility is one of my favorite things about Gun Evo.
Yeah, and when it comes to the supports, I love playing support in this game, particularly just because it feels like you're not a hard support, right? You're not like position 5 or whatever, where all you're doing is like healing and stuff. You can actually be involved in the battles. You can make a huge, make so many plays as a support player. Dom Trooper in particular is one of my favorites so far. Even though really all he offers is going to be that armory gun, but the Screaming Nimbus is so huge. It's just it feels like every position is so important when it comes to Gundam Evolution right now. But swapping on over, I don't think we're going to see the Metis right now, especially because it's so hard to try and follow up with your backliners if you are playing that Metis, right? You can't provide heals for them. With the Dom, though, you can still utilize that armor gun, and then you can charge forward, of course, with the Screaming Nimbus, follow it up with that AoE armor coming out from the Gundam Unicorn. I do love the Deathball style.
Oh yeah, Dom is so good at Mountain R&D. I mean, I was just talking about potentially the two quote-unquote healer supports, but there's so many, yeah, and we are going to see the double Unicorn and the double Dom, of course. I mean, we're going to see double Dom on pretty much everything. The big differences here are, again, it's going to be the Exia for the Barbados. And whoa, they're actually already here. They're already fighting. Looks like we're going over to point C immediately, and we are going to see a lot of bozos going down.
Yeah, and we tend to see this, especially when we start off on the outside points, C or A here on Mountain R&D. It's going to be a huge fight over this high ground, especially when you have Sazabis in play for either side. You really do want to try and maintain that position. You want to try and get your Pale Rider up there, and Victus is playing it for IQ right now. And you can see the huge fight over. Once again, the point has initially opened up and been taken by IQ, and they get in first pick onto Die.
Yeah, that is, I mean, as we expect, if you win that first high ground, you just have such a huge advantage. And look at how many IQ we can just see just standing on that high ground, continuing to hold that spot. And we usually see some pretty aggressive holds here. You're looking almost at their spawn, but there's just really nowhere that they can go. And you can just so easily back up and use that high advantage cover. But wow, just gets slammed. 20 HP, just barely escaping, not quite escaping fully. But the IQ is for sure going to hold the majority of C, and it looks like next we're going to A, so we can almost look forward to that immediately, right? I don't expect that we're going to see a bunch of commitment to pushing A or to pushing C with only 10 seconds left. So now we can just see the jump over, and we might see it immediately. We are going to with less than 10 seconds left, with a little bit over 5 seconds, and now they've just got the same position.
Yeah, BOZOS needed to try and preempt that rotation as quickly as possible, but you can see how it's almost impossible to do. IQ just jumps over that hole, and there they are onto point A, and now it's very similar to the first half so far of this map right now. Be Their Shield has to be careful. He's burning down to Mr. Big Large, and the Ashmar players are actually really not talked about enough when it comes to this map, because they command so much presence and just dominate the zones. But you can see now Be Their Shield wants to try and charge forward with that axe, but the Screaming Nimbus to counter engage onto them. Merle ends up finding Wiki with that, and that's going to be Exponent taking out his counterpart as well. Nice counter engage coming out from IQ.
Wow, IQ so far, I mean, it's only the first round, but they are looking dominant on this map. I mean, not just the fact that they've held the high ground from the first point, but that entire engagement was so clean. And it looks like we're going to be going back to C after A. It might be one of those matches where we never even get to B. Here we go. We got the full regroup, and let's see how the push goes. Chaotic holding a side angle, might be jumping over this wall pretty soon. I would love to see at least some slam here. Mr. Big Large getting almost picked off over on the side, but it's going to be hard to lock down that Ashmar.
No, it was a 1v1 versus Nitro Genocide, who's trying to find that flank. He has that Ashmar punch, and we've seen it utilized before, coming in for the flank to try and get that. You can see now preempting for this rotation, and it actually works out. They went earlier on. You talked about it. You don't want to try and fight for something that's only 5 seconds remaining on a point, but somehow IQ have still turned around. Nitro Genocide finding one more, but they have finally broken open the point, and they might actually be able to get point, or at least some progress here on point C.
Yeah, this is going to be their best chance. But again, they kind of pushed onto the actual point, and once again, IQ just reclaims this high ground, and you can see so many players again on BOZOS going down. This looks like this might be a 100-0. This is almost definitely going to at least initially go to the side of IQ. This is going to be one really final push. I don't think there's going to be an opportunity for a second push here. Maybe if they can get some extra time, but they've got to make this count. They're all pushing through the main entrance as well. No challenge for the high ground.
Screaming Nimbus being utilized here. Be Their Shield goes down before he even gets his funnels. It's going to be the Hades coming in for Invictus here to clean things up. Exponent has his funnels as well. Mr. Big Large has his Ashmar punch, but it doesn't even matter. They finally touched the point at the end there, but we'll see. Fusion Blackie ends up going down. That's going to be Blue Jay coming in with a Trans Am. He doesn't have a health pack here, but he's still chasing one more down. Picks up 3 before he trades away, and that is actually enough for BOZOS to keep this round alive.
Oh, they've got to hold it for 100%. They've got to hold a position now. They've got to get in position, a defensive position. They can't just be wandering around the actual point. I think the high ground is going to be just all too important here. This is not going to be a switch. It looks like we're going to see IQ try to push over from the other side. That flame grenade is going to do a huge amount of damage, but here we go. The Screaming Nimbus is going to catch 2, 3, maybe even 4 people. This is a great start to this push.
It just displaces the entire team. Merle just sending them packing here. Now they do trade 2 for 1 as Be Their Shield does have his funnels up. Mr. Big Large has to be careful, takes a lot of damage from his own napalm, but he does the work. He puts in the damage, and now it's going to be a 3 mobile suit advantage here on the point for IQ. Extra time ticking away, and IQ with a dominant win here in round number 1.
It's exactly like you said. You're talking about how the Ashmar players never really like get credit for how much they do on this map, but I swear we've seen the best punches, like 90% of the best punch, G maneuvers that we've seen from Ashmars have all been on this map. It is just the perfect ranges and angles, and they just knock people into the perfect spots to just be able to finish them off. I mean, just like that, that was like a double punch that knocked people into the corner where they can't escape the flame grenade in any sort of way. And yeah, you do a bunch of damage to yourself with the flame grenade, but it doesn't even matter at that point. And look at the damage. You can see Mr. Big Large with over 20k. Same thing with Merle. Dom and Ashmore, both of them, I think, are just the key suits on this map.
Yeah, right now, Mr. Big Large is just doing an amazing job. Not only has his flame grenades been on point, but he's been controlling the side angles. There's a reason why BOZOS on the other side haven't been able to make that approach, right? If it's on C, like we saw coming out from IQ, you go to the opposite and try to take the high ground from there and then fight for heights. But it's been, of course, Mr. Big Large just controlling the other lane, making sure that they can't make that approach. And so BOZOS really have to kind of try and figure out how they want to deal with Mr. Big Large. Maybe put a little bit more focus onto him. Have a mono, keep an eye on the sky as that Pale Rider, try and deal with him. But here it is, our first opening. It's going to be on C once more.
Yep, and it looks like we're going to see IQ really push for this high ground a lot quicker. And they've been just so decisive on where they want to be and when they want to be there. And I think that's a big reason why they've been doing so well here. Even when we've seen BOZOS get an opportunity to take the high ground, they haven't captured that moment. So you can see that, again, they're playing from the back foot immediately. They didn't really take a lot of deaths or anything in this initial push, but they didn't get anything from it, and that's a huge issue.
Yeah, once again, it's Mr. Big Large just controlling this lane, and no one is coming over here to try and even contest him whatsoever. Be Their Shield getting chased down. The Barbados will make it out. Never mind. Dai is able to chase out Chaotic, but they might end up losing out on this zombie for it. He doesn't have a health pack, and there it is. Mr. Big Large coming in from the skies to get some damage off. Finally, Amano doesn't deal with him, and this time around, C is not going to go completely the way of IQ. It is flipped, and this is the opportunity now for BOZOS to actually take a lead in this map.
Yeah, this is the best that they've done so far, pretty much. This is their big opportunity to kind of get into a good position. There's 19 seconds left, so they probably don't want to leave quite yet, but pretty soon they're going to have to go back to A. Once again, we've just not gone to B. I don't know why we said so many times on this map, on this broadcast, but we are now, of course, seeing the attempt from IQ to kind of get this high ground before it even changes, and it looks like they're pretty successful in that.
Yeah, Invictus is up here with that Pale Rider now. It's that high ground domination for him. Amano has to be careful. He does not want to get staggered here with 20 seconds to go before the point unlocks. Blue Jay, though, on that Exia has been struggling just a little bit on the Exia here. He did have a few moments in the first round, but you can see now that high ground is completely dominated by IQ. Once again, Exponent who's going to be forced back, though, but he's got the rest of the Death Ball here. Now, Be Their Shield charging on in. Mr. Big Large is going to go in with that punch, and that is enough. So much disruption. They pick up 3. IQ, once again, will take the point as it unlocks.
Yeah, their decisive positioning is everything, for sure. Like, they just know exactly, they feel like so practiced in this map. Like, they know exactly the moments that they need to be pushing up to this high ground, where they want to be on the high ground, what they want to do with the high ground. And Nitro now is going to be getting, oh, that is a juicy flame grenade right there. Gets shot out of the air in the 1v1 air duel, though, not able to get that punch off. Looks like we're going to see Mr. Big Large go try to get some health, but that looks like that's going to hold off most of that push. And that is almost an entire team wipe. IQ just holding on, regaining that lead, and we are now finally going to go to point B.
Yeah, it's coming down. Once again, the differences between our Ashmar players right now. Nitro Genocide has been struggling up against Mr. Big Large in those aerial duels, but this time around, the air isn't going to matter as much. It's going to come down to our Sazabis at this point. But you can see now, IQ They're preparing for it. They know that possibly a drop down is going to come in for BOZOS, and that's exactly what they do. Trans Am utilized, Blue Jay finds one. That's Invictus falling. The Unicorn will go down next, and Merle is the only one on the IQ side to find a pick. Blue Jay will ultimately go down at the end here as Mr. Big Large keeps this alive for his squad. There's still 10 seconds remaining. Now IQ can come back with the numbers.
Yeah, I do have to say though, those like Trans Ams that we've been seeing from Blue Jay have been incredible. They've been absolute game changing, and they don't always necessarily get the win. But okay, here we go. We're gonna see the G maneuver now from the Barbados. Looks like maybe not quite getting as much damage as it wanted to, and that can be tough if you whiff and then you get focused down. But we're gonna see a lot now of IQ go down regardless, and this is looking to be a much closer round than it was previous.
Yeah, it's 50 to 60% right now, still in favor of IQ, but it should go the way of BOZOS in just a moment. Almost all of our G maneuvers have been utilized here, but the big difference maker is going to be Big Large. You have to be careful on that Bozo defense not to clump up, and you can see they're doing a good job of actually staying apart from each other right now. Big Large is looking for, they do have that armor in the back line now. Big Large goes in with that punch, and he does force back this zombie, and they're trying to hunt him down, but throughout all of this, Blue Jay finds that first knock feed. Their shield has fallen. Now they don't have their front line here for IQ. Big Large is just not able to find the same kind of windows that he did when the points were out here. And they are praying, of course, that this one does go over to A, and it will. So Big Large now will be able to open up once more.
Yeah, that is, of course, one of the downsides. But, I mean, you know, you don't really have to worry about the fact that you're not quite as good on B. You still got the flame grenades for the chokes. You've still got just solid damage. You've got great escapes when you're on Ashmar. But, yeah, this is definitely going to be, again, back to a more solid spot for IQ. However, currently, we're seeing finally, like, a really strong high ground hold on the side of BOZOS, as they're just not letting IQ push up as easily. Chaotic, though, pushing in, trying to get some mace hits, getting knocked down B their shield. Eventually, maybe getting picked off. No, actually managed to escape. Very impressive as Big Large picks up someone else as well.
Oh boy, Chaotic down to 26 HP. He does get chased down by Amano, who did have the Hades popping that entire time. But as the point unlocks, that is going to be IQ to take it. And this is going to be the finisher, I believe. It's going to end here on point A. And IQ wants to start things off, or actually end things the way everything started here on Mountain R&D.
Yeah, and we see the little green group here, but IQ once again holding that high ground that they've been doing so well, and we're already seeing some damage. Just, I mean, all of this AOE damage that you get from the Ashmar maybe, or from the Dom can just add so much. Great punch again as well, and it's going to be 2 suits down on the side of BOZOS. That already is a huge disadvantage with only a few seconds left. 2 more suits going down, only Exponent going down on the side of IQ, and that should be it. I don't even know if they're going to be able to get back to challenge it. And that is IQ doing what they've been doing best.
That is impressive to see. You can see how Big Large was actually able to change up his play style when it came to that final fight. He was consistently controlling the outer lanes and making sure that Genocider on the other side could not find an opening with that Ashmar. But as soon as he had that punch, he knew the win condition was right here. This Ashmar punch is all I need to connect with. I just need to create that disruption when they try to come in. He's able to play with his team. He no longer focuses on that left-hand side, and he just focuses on the win ahead of him. Congratulations. They take a much well-deserved victory there, and especially with the huge play coming up from Big Large.
Yeah. So I believe, unless chat's trolling me, that Mr. Big Large is actually Sunglasses, who was, of course, you know, a previous player that we've seen before winning a previous champion here from BOZOS. So I was like wondering, I was like, who is this? Because they're like clearly good. They've played before. I was like, is this a troll name? And it kind of is a troll name. Although honestly, Mr. Big Large is a much better name. I'm throwing that out there. I'm a big fan of the name. But yeah, I was just trying to figure out, like, you know, this player is really competitive. Like, we got to know who they are, and apparently we do, unless chat's trolling me.
I don't, yeah, it really doesn't matter at the end of the day, because he is definitely making a name for himself regardless of what it is.
Yeah, it's true. Hold on, let me see if actually we have any of these bracket updates. I'm actually pretty curious. This is, I think, for the first time, one of the strongest overall brackets that we've ever had, and we didn't actually get a chance to go over the bracket before, so I wanted to look at this. Of course, IQ will be moving on into the winners finals, which will be tomorrow, so congratulations to them with an extremely strong showing, especially on the domination map. But we've got some other teams that, you know, I just felt like we should point out before we you know, throw it a break for our next set. But for example, we have some players, huge shout outs to Iron Blooded Orangutans, who played today and had some really unfortunate like teammate issues issues as far as like, you know, not having their full roster here, but I really appreciate them coming and playing. So I just wanted to give them a huge shout out. And, you know, they played even a 5v6, which is extremely like, I don't know, it shows like real dedication. So I just really want to give them a huge shout outs. We got Portland Burnsiders who've been in a lot of these. They're also unfortunately out as well. They went down to Akuma Kalimbar, which is a newer team to this event, so it's really cool to see. They're currently taking on Satora's Esports in the losers bracket as Space Noid Supremacists, okay, is now another new team in this bracket, and they're taking on Skill Issue. So I just wanted to give a shout out to some of those teams that we might not get a chance to see on the broadcast before they leave, and especially to, like I said, Iron Blood Orangutans. Really unfortunate. We really hope you get a chance to play at your full power next time. But any last comments about this set before we throw to the break?
No, just fantastic. I mean, we thought, you know, it was gonna. Typically, there's like one unit that stands out throughout most of our events, but it's been a good representation of multiple units so far. And I know it's only been 2 sets, but I'm loving what I'm seeing coming out from all of our players.
I agree. It's one of the most up in the air tournaments that we've had so far by a huge amount, I think. But of course, we've still got so much of it to go, and that's what makes it so up in the air. So we're going to be taking a short break as we set up our next winners semifinals match. But don't go anywhere during that time. You know, get a little break, get a little bit of a rest. But we will be back with more Gundam Evolution right after this.